Time for a little reading. Who's sitting beside me? Little Presley. Hi, baby. And then it's snowing outside. The game is on. Tar Heel watching the snow. All right, let's get to it. So it's Christmas season, and it was depressing. They just finished having all of the birthday season, she said, because there's so many birthdays from July and August and October, and then it's Christmas. All right, here we go. And Elvis all this time has been performing his very first set in Vegas. He was there for a month, started the end of July and ran to the end of August. 2 shows a night, 8 p.m. and midnight. And, you know, again, because of his wake schedule, he wakes up at 4 or 5 about 4 in the afternoon. And then, so 8 o'clock to him is like a 12 o'clock show. And then a midnight show for him is like 4 in the afternoon. And then after that, he goes back to his dressing room and he changes clothes and then meets a bunch of people, all the stars, and people come back and talk to him after the show. And then a lot of times after that, so this will be like at 2 in the morning, which to him is like 6 at night. And then he'll go back up to his suite with a lot of the backup singers, and they'll play gospel music to basically kind of help him wind down for a couple, they'll say till the rest of the night, you know, all through the night. And so like at 6 in the morning, you know, they all leave, and Elvis goes to bed at like 7 in the morning and then starts it all over again the next day. So, you know, to him, that's like, you know, 4 p.m. to 7 a.m. is like us from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m., you know, so it's just a different time period. But okay, here we go. So this is the morning after Christmas. Sorry, Ava's about to get a stick. You're not going to do that, are you, girl? No. All right. The morning after Christmas, I carried the trash to the metal can outside. Opening the lid, I saw 12 fresh talisman roses lying on the bottom. Elvis had sent her some roses and someone threw them away. She didn't even see them. It was apparent that Jack had had enough of my secret admirer. My feelings for this distant admirer were also beginning to strain. He hadn't called in months. His career had rocketed back to the top with unprecedented speed. He performed in Vegas again in February 1970. So that would be 2 months later. Because this was Christmas of 69, so now we're February of 70, and introduced his trademark glittering white jumpsuits. Those jumpsuits in the early 70s were my favorites. Oh my gosh, they had the fringe hanging on them, and they didn't have quite the big bell bottoms that he got later on. There's a lot of beautiful, 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 beautiful jumpsuits with all of the rhinestones on them. Oh my God, there's some that are so beautiful. But my favorite is really the more simple styles of the early 70s. Okay, so introduces trademark glittering white jumpsuits. He followed up his doubly certified Vegas comeback by touring the country, giving concerts. He created a sensation everywhere he went and even managed to fill the large Houston Astrodome for a series of concerts. I felt lonely, left out, and unimportant. Time passed. I threw myself into my work, CCD classes, and my lifetime campaign of instilling in my children a taste for the creative arts and music to go along with a strong faith in God. They were growing and progressing so fast. Debbie earned a scholarship to study language and music at the Sorbonne in France. Interesting. Unfortunately, she contracted a heart infection known as pericarditis and had to turn it down. Wow. She recovered in time to accept a merit scholarship to the University of Dallas. Melody was becoming more proficient. That was Debbie. That was the oldest daughter. Melody was becoming more proficient. That just made me think Melody, how Elvis sings melodies. It's musical. Melody was becoming more proficient at art and poetry and was the only one of my children who sang publicly with me. Denise was studying psychology. Desiree was growing tall and continued to excel at the arts. She and Jacqueline were studying ballet and music through a gifted students program offered by Southern Methodist University. Desiree, of course, continued to haunt me. She was developing into a woman and had a full mane of beautiful black hair, like her mama. Never once did I look at her face without thinking of her father. So she's got beautiful black hair, like her mama, because Elvis's hair when he was younger was a dark sandy brown, or sandy blonde, excuse me. Yeah, he had dark sandy blonde hair when he was younger and when she first met him. And then he started dyeing it late in the 50s. So, because he thought it would help on the stage presence stand out more. But because he dyed his hair black, when Desiree with her black hair looks like her daddy too. No, never once did I look at her face without thinking of her father. What would he say if he knew? Would he hate me for not telling him? Now that he had Lisa, would it matter? Same questions, same old questions. Desiree was still a serious and solemn child. She became attached to Father Bud Powers, another priest at St. Paul the Apostle, where she attended school. He spent hours with her. He sensed an inexplicable loneliness in her, as if something was missing. I'd see them together, walking, talking, always close. He was the father she never had. That was probably her loneliness, was because she didn't have a father, her real father. And which was interesting because Elvis had the loneliness because of his brother. So they both had that loneliness about them. Elvis called in September. So a whole year, almost 9 months have gone by. He said he tried to call me many times, but never got through. He left messages from a John Jones that I never received. Probably Jack was answering the phone. It wasn't hard to figure out why. Flowers in the trash, no messages from him. My relationship with Elvis had reverted to the dismal triangle of the past. I felt guilty for having doubted him. There it goes. He had tried all year to call, and Jack was not giving her the messages. Ugh. Now, and he's a nicer man to her. He at least doesn't rape her, but oh my gosh. I thought you had run away again, he said. Bless. I'm sorry. Things are just bad here. Come to Memphis. I need to see you. I tried to beg off, telling him he didn't need me now that he was back on top. He countered by saying that he needed me more than ever. That was the right answer. I flew to Memphis the next day and took a cab to the Admiral Benbow Inn, a hotel near the city. I felt that wonderful nervousness again, brushing my hair, checking the mirror for telltale wrinkles, and waiting for the familiar knock. When it came, Elvis was dressed more casually than ever before, sporting a dark blue jogging suit, a floppy beige golf hat pulled low over his eyes, and another phony mustache. He wore that for sentimental reasons, and I burst out laughing. That set the tone for the whole evening. Laughter and loving. Aw. Yes, he starts wearing these, blue is his favorite color. So he has dark blue silk pajamas that I've heard other girlfriends mention. Linda Thompson, for one, who he dated from 73 to 76, or 72 to 76. And I've seen him in video footage walking up the steps to get on his airplane in a dark blue jogging suit. And here he's wearing it in 1970, September of 1970. So he started out. I've recorded another song for you, he said. Snowbird. I love it. That's you, my little snowbird. that is such a great song. I'm going to put that on for you all to listen to. I think it was an Anne Murray song, but he liked it. So back then, you could just record anything. It was just easier. I mean, easier times for that. So he'd hear a song on the radio he liked, he would record it, just like Bridge Over Troubled Water, you know. So Snowbird, I believe, was Anne Murray, but he identified with it, so he recorded it, and he thought of Lucy the whole time. So I'm going to give y'all a story on that, and I'll post it in the text string. So this was in September of 70 when he recorded Snowbird. He was so different than before. The concerts had renewed his confidence and brightened his outlook. He presented me with a yellow porcelain rose, finally one that couldn't wilt. I want you to place it on your dresser, to forever remind you of my love, he said, giving the mandatory speech. Remember, he has to give a speech before he gives a gift. We had a great time enjoying each other without any outside problems intruding on the moment. We even danced together for the first time. The song Mona Lisa came over the hotel radio, and we waltzed around the room. I gotta look for that. When I left later that evening, there was a little sorrow in the parting. It was as if the dark cloud hanging over him had passed. His happiness made me happy. He spoke again of making our relationship permanent, and for the first time in more than a decade, I began thinking it was possible. Our haphazard affair continued to work its magic. Prior to this meeting, I had been slowly sinking into my own depression. His rejuvenation energized his body, and in turn, the energy poured through mine. The next month, on my 34th birthday, he sent a dozen roses with a new inscription on the card, "You're my snowbird." So that was in October. So we're in October of 70. In late November, I became deathly ill and began hemorrhaging. I knew instantly what was wrong. I was pregnant and was in danger of having a miscarriage. The pain was so intense that Denise had to drive me to the hospital. Aside from the pain, the implications of the pregnancy were churning through my mind. It was Elvis's child. Oh my gosh. From their together in September. My husband and I hadn't been intimate in a very long time. If the baby was saved, I would be forced to change my life. A change that would throw my family into turmoil. Wow, I forgot all about that. She got pregnant with his child again in September of 1970. Wow. As I rode to the hospital, I decided it was in God's hands. If I remained pregnant, this time I would tell Elvis not only about the baby, but about Desiree as well. I couldn't help feeling that Elvis may have wanted me to get pregnant. He was always so careful about taking precautions, but the last time in Memphis, just as in 1957, we let it slip. Maybe he wanted to force me to go to him, and this was his way. As Denise pulled up to the emergency room, my maternal instincts took over. Despite the problems it would present, I began hoping that the baby would survive. It would be wonderful to give Elvis a son. At the hospital, the pain increased and made it impossible to think about anything. I fought the best I could, but I lost the baby. I was so sick afterward, there was no immediate depression. It didn't hit me until a few days later. I had left it in God's hands, and a decision had been made. There would be no pregnancy to force me out of my marriage and to Elvis, or at least into sudden. It didn't hit me until a few days later. I had left it to God, and a decision had been made. There would be no pregnancy to force me out of my marriage and to Elvis, or at least into suddenly presenting Elvis with what would have been a difficult decision for him to make. Instead, I would return to my unhappy life and my secrets. The sadness of losing the child was tempered by my belief that it just wasn't meant to be, and by a strange sort of confirmation that I had been right all along in my decision not to tell him about Desiree. In 1970, okay, this is research. In 1970, 12-year-old Desiree was maturing in more ways than in body. She was old enough to recognize that there was something out of kilter regarding her status in the family. When I was 12, my mother and Jack had their anniversary. I remember hearing they had only been married for 10 years. I knew Mother had been married before, but according to my sisters, that marriage ended long before I was born. The numbers didn't add up. I couldn't figure out how I was 12 and they had been married for only 10 years. So I made my own assumption that I must be adopted. I began to really believe it. For one, I didn't look in like any of my sisters, or Jack for that matter. Then one day, a friend of Mother's was over and told me that I looked just like my mother. I was so thrilled because I adored Mother. I remember wishing I could be as beautiful as she. After that, I began to doubt whether I really was adopted. And if I wasn't, then who is my father? I built up my courage and asked Mother, not if I was adopted, but why she had been married only 10 years. She told me that Jack was not my real father and that she couldn't tell me who my real father was until I was older. But someday I would know. She said she had never loved anyone more than my father and that they were not married legally, but they were married in the eyes of God. I guess I was just so happy that Mother was my real mother that nothing else mattered to me, so I didn't ask any more questions. I felt special because I was close to Mother. I knew she was unhappy about the circumstances of my father, so I didn't bring the subject up again for 4 or 5 years. And then Melody adds, Desiree asked me several times who her father was during this period. I didn't know. I told her to ask Mother, even though I knew that wouldn't help. We all knew that we were never to talk about Desiree's father. It was an unspoken law in the house, and we abided by it. The main thing going through Desiree's mind was that she was adopted, and that mortified her. She idolized Mother in every way. She wanted to grow up and look like her, act like her, be her. When she found out that Mother was her real mother, that was the biggest relief of her life. That was her main concern. All right, back to the story. Desiree is starting to think about, something's different. I was home alone about a week before Christmas. This is Christmas of 1970. Taking a few days off from work to recover from a cold when the phone rang. How are you, baby? Bad, but he didn't need to know that. He said he was lonely and had to force himself not to call me because he knew I didn't want to talk to him. That didn't make any sense until he mentioned calling and leaving messages but never hearing from me. I explained that the messages weren't getting through. He was down again. His mood swings were becoming severe. Honey, I'm leaving here. I can't take it anymore. I want you to meet me in Washington. Please don't say no. I need to talk to you again. Why was he going to Washington? I couldn't meet him there if he was going to be with his entourage. He said he was going alone. That was hard to believe. He didn't go anywhere alone. He kept insisting he was going on his own. I'm not a child, he said. I'm sick of all these people around me. Listen, baby, I need to talk to you. Please come. I really can't afford it, I said, still doubting whether he would be alone. I'm so sick of this mess, Lucy. You can afford it. You are my love, and I have money. What I have is yours, and you don't want anything. What is this? Just go to the ticket counter, and everything will be arranged. I'll be at the Washington Hotel, registered under Colonel Burroughs. When? Now, baby. I'm going now, and I want you there when I arrive. I need you. Please. He was agitated and insistent. I had no choice but to go. All right, a little research. Colonel Burroughs, the name Elvis used at the Hotel Washington, was a variation of the name Colonel Parker used when he didn't want to be recognized. Released from the shackles of the lobotomizing movie soundtracks, Elvis began to record in earnest again. The breakthrough song was In the Ghetto, written by Mac Davis. It reached number 3 on May 3rd, 1969, and brought Elvis's seductive voice to a whole new generation of record buyers. His last top 10 hit had been Crying in the Chapel in 1965. That August, 69, Suspicious Minds, which he recorded at American Sound Studios, along with In the Ghetto. Suspicious Minds, the showstopper of his renewed live performances, gave Elvis his first #1 song since Good Luck Charm in 1962. He followed that with Don't Cry Daddy, Rubberneckin', Kentucky Rain, and The Wonder of You, all big hits. In the midst of this chart comeback, Elvis continued to earn universal critical praise and outright fan hysteria with his Las Vegas revival. His decision to take the Vegas show on the road completed the climb. Because he was in Vegas in the spring, usually like February, March, maybe April, and in the fall, August, typically August, maybe some in September. And so in the meantime, he told the Colonel he wanted to travel and tour for other fans. So they started putting together his touring schedule. So I guess he started that in 1970. That completed the climb. In one short year, Elvis went from being a has-been to having one of the biggest years of his illustrious career. Still, it merely acted as a temporary diversion to the increasing darkness in his life. All right, I think we're going to stop there because that's going to start another chapter. Okay, so we're probably going to go into this a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and give y'all a heads up. So, in December of 1970, so Elvis, when things were going well for him and he was enjoying his life and he was being creative, he was very happy. When things were new, he was very happy. When he got in a rut, he would get down, which a lot of people, but that's just his creativity and energized him. And so getting on the stage in Las Vegas was great. It was new, it was nervous, but he was accepted. That made him feel good. That energized him. He had some good music. He was recording an American Sound, and he was enjoying that so much. And let y'all watch the snow while I talk. And so he has a baby. Life is new with the baby, and now he's touring. So he went on his first couple of tours, and the tours were usually 2, maybe 3 weeks at a time. And he had to sell. He had bought a ranch in 1967 and loved riding the horses and going down there. That was another thing that energized him. He had to stop being able to go there because of all the traveling and the touring, and it was taking a lot of money and to keep it running. And his dad said, "You're gonna have to sell it." So he had spent a lot of money at that ranch. Like, he bought trailers for all of his entourage to go there and stay. Like, when he went, he didn't want to go by himself. He wanted everybody to come. Well, if everybody's going to come, everybody needs a truck. Everybody needs a house. Everybody needs a horse. Everybody needs a saddle. Everybody needs riding clothes. Everybody needs this and that and this and that. And so he just was wanting everybody to have a good time. Plus, when he bought the ranch, it had like, I don't know how many cattle on it. So he still had the cattle, and he had people working down there for him, keeping the cattle and all that. And his dad was like, you got to sell stuff. We got to start spending money. And so Priscilla took her dad's side, so she's already got an affair going. But he's trying to make the marriage work. And amidst all this going on in his life, and she takes his side when it comes to takes his dad's side when it comes to stop spending the money. And she talks about this in her book. And another couple other guys that work for him in the Memphis Mafia entourage also talk about this. So it's very well known. And he gets mad at them for telling him. He does not like people to tell him what to do. He wants to spend money. He wants to spend money. And he doesn't care about the money. He just wants everyone to have fun. He's just life. They missed out on so much growing up. And now his dad's saying, Elvis, you need to stop spending so much money. And Priscilla's like, yeah, your dad's right. And he's like, he gets so mad. So he goes and gets some money out of the safe in his office and leaves without telling anybody. Elvis never, ever did that. Never. He really did not. So when he goes to see Lucy, it's very out of character in a way, because typically he always has someone with him. So, these times he's gone to visit her, he doesn't tell anybody, and he can do that. So he hops in the car and goes to, I don't know if he took the car, if he called, or someone took, I don't think anyone took him. I think he got in the car and he went to the airport and got on an airplane, and he went to Washington, D.C. And then he goes from D.C., he goes to Los Angeles. And from Los Angeles, he goes back to D.C., and that's when he meets President Nixon. The very famous meeting and the famous picture of him meeting, and he writes a letter to President Nixon while he's on the airplane from Los Angeles back to Washington, D.C. But everyone is like, why did he go to Washington first? Why didn't he just go to L.A.? Because he went to L.A. to get Jerry Schilling, who was one of the guys that worked for him, was one of the Memphis Mafia guys. But he goes there, and he tells him, well, I was in Washington, now I'm coming back. But no one's ever figured out, why did he go to Washington first? And we're about to find out. So there's also another girl that he meets the end of actually on August 16th, because it's really weird, because I think she meets him the day that he dies in 1977. It's the same date. So she is standing in line to go see a concert. This is in August 16th, 1969. So it's right after his, 1970. She meets him in 1970. Is that right? Or is it 69? I don't remember when she meets him. But anyway, she lives in Washington, D.C., and she works for the government. And so she's standing in line. She and her friend are standing in line to go see Elvis. And one of the guys would stand out, and they would look for girls that they thought he might like. Remember, he said the guys bring girls to him. So they kind of are walking around the lobby of the hotel and watching the people in line. And if they see someone that they think's kind of down Elvis's alley, they go and invite her. Would you like to meet Elvis? And then they sit that person in. They'll either take him back before the show or after the show. Typically after the show, I think. He meets him after the show. Because before the show, he's nervous and all that. But anyway, so I read this girl's book, and she goes back and she meets him. And when he comes out of his dressing room, and the room's full of people to talk to him and stuff, he sees her right away. And oh my gosh, this girl, this woman, she looks so much like Priscilla. People mistake her for Priscilla. But who did he say Priscilla looked like? Lucy. So he sees her, and he is immediately attracted to her. And they end up having a kind of an affair. He talks to her. Well, she's in Washington, D.C., and she meets him the second trip. So not the first trip. So he goes to Washington, he goes back to L.A., and then he goes back to Washington, and he invites that girl to the hotel, and then she talks all in the book about him going to see Nixon and all of that. But and Jerry Schilling is with them, and another entourage guy comes from Memphis and joins them. So he's got two bodyguards with him when he goes to see President Nixon. Anyway, the part about him going to Washington first before he goes to L.A. is very, it's like, why did he do that? And nothing, there's no story of anything happening. Nobody knows anything about that. And Lucy comes out and talks about it. So now we know. So in all the biographies or anything that you read about Elvis's trip to Washington, they'll either only talk about the trip where he went to see President Nixon that first time, the second time he went, or the second part of that trip. But some people know enough that he went to Washington first and then went back to LA and then back to Washington. So, and I think Jerry Schilling might talk about that in his book. And that's probably because Elvis said, I came from Washington and I realized I need something, and so I want you to come with me. So he tells him that he goes out to LA to pick him up to go back to Washington. So Elvis doesn't say anything about Lucy. So anyway, to me, it's like this small little piece of the puzzle that no one's known anything about. And what happens? Lucy comes out with her story, and it's because of her that he goes to Washington that first time. Because I think he wants to go to Washington. He said, I'm going to Washington. Meet me there. So anyway, we're going to find out about that because that's going to be in the next chapter. All right, now I am going to put Snowbird on, and I'm going to give a little bit of a story of Snowbird so that you'll understand the meaning behind the words, because it can be a little confusing. So because he talks about my love, my forever love, and he talks about my snowbird and wanting to be with the snowbird. So I'm going to explain that. So when you listen to that song, you will understand that it is perfect and how Elvis identified with it and thought of Lucy. All right. Well, that's enough about that. And I will talk with you guys later.